Who was he looking for? A terrifying ghost haunts this condo. He wanted me to tell his story, an unsettling experience he had a few years back, around 2 or 3 years ago from the time he shared it with an interviewer. It happened while he was living in a condominium complex, let's call it the Riverside Condos, located in a district on the edge of the city. Pat described the layout. The complex consisted of 3 main buildings lined up in a row: Building A, Building B, and Building C. Pat resided in Building C, the one furthest back from the main road. Flanking Building C on the left and right were other apartment buildings belonging to different projects, built close enough that they essentially backed onto the sides of Building C. Pat explained that he often returned to his apartment late at night, usually sometime between 1:00 a.m. and 2:00 a.m., either after finishing work or spending time out with friends. Access into the condominium buildings required a key card, a standard security feature for residents. His own apartment was located on the 3rd floor. Life there was fairly routine until one particular night. Pat was returning home quite late, around 1:30 a.m., definitely before 2:00 a.m., as he recalls. As he walked up the condominium stairs towards his 3rd floor unit, movement on the floor below him, the 2nd floor, caught the corner of his eye. He instinctively turned his head to get a proper look. Standing there in the 2nd floor corridor was a man. Pat remembers his appearance vividly because the hallway lights were bright. The man had very short, almost shaved hair, similar to a soldier's haircut. He estimated the man was around 170 cm, about 57, tall, with a medium build and a dark, somewhat reddish complexion. He was dressed simply in a white short-sleeved shirt, blue jeans, and sandals. However, it was the man's actions that were truly bizarre. He was standing facing one of the apartment doors, rhythmically and gently bumping his forehead against it. Thock, thock, thock. Pat could faintly hear the soft, repetitive sound echoing in the quiet hallway. Pat's immediate assumption was that the man must be drunk. Perhaps he was locked out of his apartment, or maybe he was having a dispute with someone inside who wouldn't open the door. It seemed the most logical explanation for such strange behavior, even if it was unsettling. Although the sight was peculiar, Pat didn't feel it was his place to intervene or stare for too long. Believing it was likely just an intoxicated resident having trouble, he continued walking up the stairs towards his own apartment on the 3rd floor, dismissing the odd encounter from his mind for the time being. This was the first disruption to his normal late-night returns. Believing it was likely just an intoxicated resident having trouble, he continued walking up the stairs towards his own apartment on the 3rd floor, dismissing the odd encounter from his mind for the time being. This was the first disruption to his normal late-night returns. Pat admitted that after that first night, he'd largely forgotten about the strange man, initially chalking it up to a one-off incident, perhaps involving too much alcohol. His routine returned to normal for the next couple of days. However, about 2 or 3 days later, the unsettling situation repeated itself, bringing the first real questions to Pat's mind. He finished work late again, around 11 p.m., and arrived back at the Riverside Condos close to 1 a.m. As he walked down the corridor of his own floor this time, the 3rd floor, he froze. There, further down the hall, was the man again. It was unmistakably the same individual. Same shaved head, same build, same white shirt, jeans, and sandals. And disturbingly, he was performing the exact same action, standing before an apartment door, gently but persistently bumping his forehead against it. Thock, thock, thock. Seeing him again, identical in appearance and action, but now on Pat's own floor, banished any lingering thoughts of mere drunkenness. A chill ran down Pat's spine. This couldn't just be a coincidence anymore. Questions began to race through his mind. Who was this person? Why was he wearing the exact same clothes days after the first sighting? Why this repetitive, bizarre headbanging ritual? Was he targeting specific apartments? And why did no one inside the rooms he approached ever seem to react or open the door? Pat also vaguely recalled noticing that some doors in the building looked damaged, possibly leading to empty or abandoned units. Hung wrong, as they might be called locally. Could this man be connected to one of those? This second encounter felt different, more deliberate, more unnerving. Pat knew he couldn't simply walk away this time. He needed answers, or at least to alert someone who might know what was going on. He turned around and headed back downstairs to find a security guard. He noted, adding to his slight unease, that while buildings A and B usually had guards stationed near their entrances, his building, Building C, the last one in the row, often seemed unattended. He located a security guard near one of the front buildings and explained what he had just witnessed on the third floor, describing the man and his strange actions, still cautiously suggesting he might be drunk. The guard listened, then calmly replied, "Oh, okay, I'll go check." But he made no immediate move to go upstairs with Pat. Instead, Pat distinctly overheard the guard speaking quietly into his radio, using a phrase that stuck with him. "He's back again. He's back again. Ma ik liu, ma ik liu." The guard seemed hesitant, simply assuring Pat he would handle it shortly without any real urgency. This cryptic response, "He's back again," solidified Pat's growing fear. What did that imply? Did the security team already know about this man? Was this a recurring event? Why the lack of immediate action or apparent concern? The man's strange behavior was now compounded by the guard's puzzling reaction. The situation suddenly felt far more sinister than just a resident causing a minor disturbance. Pat was left wondering what exactly was going on in this building, and who or what was this man who kept returning. Frustrated and increasingly unnerved by the guard's cryptic reaction and the man's disappearance, Pat decided he couldn't just let it go. He had to know what was happening. Instead of using the main central staircase again, he opted to descend via one of the emergency fire escapes located at the end of the building. Specifically, the one on the left side if you were facing the complex. Driven by a mix of fear and a desperate need for answers, he started down from the 5th floor. As he reached the landing between the 5th and 4th floors, his blood ran cold. The man was there again. This time, however, he wasn't banging his head. He was standing near the edge of the fire escape landing, by the sliding glass window often used by residents for smoking or phone calls. He was leaning forward slightly, peering out into the darkness, Chang Gok Na. Pat recognized him instantly, same shaved head, same clothes. A part of Pat felt a surge of adrenaline. Maybe he could finally corner him or get help. He thought, got him, and instinctively turned to head back up, planning to drag the reluctant security guard down this time. But as he turned, the figure spoke. In a slow, flat, almost detached voice, the words drifted towards Pat. "Going now, or about to go. Dio ya pai la." The man climbed onto the fire escape railing, onto the very edge between the 4th and 5th floors. For a terrifying second, Pat braced for the sight of a fall, but the man didn't fall. He didn't jump, he simply vanished. One moment he was perched there, the next, gone, instantly, impossibly fast. Pat knew, with chilling certainty, that no living person could disappear like that, nor likely survive such a fall unscathed if they had somehow jumped. This answered one question with horrifying clarity. The man wasn't just strange, he wasn't human. Terror gripped Pat, but he fought to keep his composure. His mind screamed at him to look down over the railing, to see if there was any sign below, but an even stronger wave of fear washed over him. The paralyzing thought of peering down only to see the figure looking up at him. He couldn't risk it. Abandoning the fire escape route, he scrambled back inside the building and hurried down the main central staircase, his heart pounding. He found a security guard again, possibly the same one or another from the team, and recounted everything he had just witnessed. The appearance on the fire escape, the cryptic words, and the impossible vanishing act. He stressed, "I don't think that was a person." The guard's response was frustratingly noncommittal, merely stating, "Well, I can't really say anything about that." Pat, desperate for proof or explanation, asked if they could review the CCTV footage from the hallways and stairs. The guard shut him down firmly. "You can look if you want, but you won't see him." This chilling statement implied the guards had likely already checked the cameras on previous occasions and knew this entity didn't appear on recordings. The guard did add, however, that sightings like this were known to happen, becoming more frequent, Pat later recalled being told, particularly around major Buddhist holy days, Wan Frayai, when the figure would reportedly wander the halls, banging on doors. Still needing more concrete answers, Pat decided to investigate further himself. He walked to a nearby convenience store, a 7-Eleven type place, bought a couple of energy drinks, like M150, perhaps as a small offering or an excuse, and approached the security guard stationed at the adjacent condominium building, the one whose rear faced the fire escape where he just had the terrifying encounter. Feigning casual curiosity, Pat asked this guard if there were any unusual stories or problems associated with his building, Building C next door. This time, he hit upon the truth. The neighboring guard was much more forthcoming. He confirmed that Pat's building, Building C, indeed had a reputation. He then relayed the tragic story that provided the horrifying answer Pat sought. Apparently, some time ago, a man matching the description Pat provided had come to the condominium desperately searching for someone, perhaps a relative, perhaps a girlfriend. He couldn't find the person he was looking for and reportedly ran out of money. Distraught and possibly mentally unraveling, he began wandering the halls, banging his head on numerous apartment doors, disturbing residents. His desperate search ended tragically when he went to an upper floor or the roof and jumped to his death from the front of Building C. The guard added more chilling details. Residents living in apartments whose balconies or windows faced that specific fire escape often reported unsettling experiences, which is why many kept their curtains permanently drawn. Sometimes, if they glanced out, they might see the figure of the man standing on the fire escape landing, just looking. He then shared a particularly terrifying account. A young woman living in one of those units had noticed the man peering in through a gap in her curtains late one night. Thinking he was a pervert or a peeping Tom, roke jit, she angrily slid open her balcony door to confront and yell at him. The moment she opened it, the entity allegedly lunged directly at her from the fire escape railing. Her terrified screams alerted neighbors and security. The young woman was so traumatized by the encounter that she reportedly packed her essentials and left immediately, returning only briefly within the next 3 days to collect the rest of her belongings before moving out permanently. Hearing this full account, the tragic suicide, the connection to the headbanging, the fire escape appearances, and the terrifying aggression shown towards the young woman finally provided Pat with the gruesome answer. The man wasn't just a drunk. He was the restless spirit of the suicide victim, forever searching, forever repeating his desperate actions. Pat also recalled hearing faint, knocking sounds on his own apartment door late at night on several occasions before these main events. Sounds he had previously dismissed as neighbors, but now chillingly reinterpreted. He remembered the guard at his own building, mentioning the CCTV blindness and the increased activity on holy days. He also reflected on the unusually cheap rent, around 2,500 baht per month plus utilities, with no hefty deposit, and the noticeable number of vacant, dilapidated rooms, hung rong, in Building C, suggesting the building's dark reputation likely affected its occupancy and value. Pat was done. He didn't return to his room that night, instead staying up talking with the helpful neighboring guard until morning. He then went back to his apartment only long enough to grab his most essential belongings and immediately went to stay with friends. Within about 2 weeks of that first sighting, he had moved out of the riverside condos for good. He told the interviewer he did try to make merit and pray for the spirit, hoping to bring it some peace. He kept in touch with a few acquaintances still living there for about a year afterwards, and heard that sightings and strange occurrences, like the entity confronting some teenagers smoking on the fire escape one evening, continued. Ultimately, while Pat finally understood what the figure was, the specific question of who exactly the man had been so desperately searching for remains unanswered. It was a question Pat, having found his own terrifying answer and subsequent escape, had no intention of ever returning to investigate further. Did this story give you goosebumps? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more scary stories like this one, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel.